Welcome to Let's Do Lunch. Today is Monday, which is always our business of streaming day. But before I introduce our host and guest today, I want to say that like others in the music industry, DMW will be disconnecting from business tomorrow in support of our community and in our belief in a fair society that promotes equality and justice for all people. Tomorrow is a blackout day for the music industry, and we'll be participating in that. Now on to today's show. I'm very excited that we have Colin Dixon, our regular host, back on the show today. Colin, as you know, is Chief Analyst and founder at nScreenMedia. Colin, who do we have on the show with you today?
Well, we are very lucky because we have Soumya Sriraman, who is CEO and president of BritBox. So Soumya, if you'd like to join us. And by the way, Ned, thank you so much for doing that tomorrow. I just want you to know that I fully support you in doing that. So thank you very much for doing that.
Thank you.
And Soumya, welcome.
Thank you, Colin. As you can see, I have teleported myself to my favorite location.
So what is this? You're at the scene of Death in Paradise. You're on set at Death in Paradise.
Yes.
That's very exciting. Well, I think probably maybe a great place for us to start is for us to take a quick look at what BritBox is. But before we do that, I'm going to play a short video. But before we do that, I just want to tell everybody, please introduce yourself on the chat window. So you can click down there on that chat and introduce yourself to your fellow attendees. And the other thing is, if you have a question for Soumya, please enter it in the Q&A window. Now, I will have that window open during the discussion. So if I get a chance, I will inject your question in live. But even if I don't, stick around because we will have a poll at the end and we'll do Q&A at the end for you to get your questions answered. So that said, let me see if I can actually execute this, this video. So I'm going to share that video if I can find my cursor. There we go. And there is the video. So here we go.
BritBox. Watch them all with a free trial.
Oh, we started at the end. We will play that again.
New this month, an acclaimed BritBox original.
I'm investigating the disappearance of Charlotte Callahan. Are you going to tell me where she is?
Based on a remarkable true story.
He's confessed to 2 murders.
God forgive you lot for what you've done.
This is your last chance.
And BritBox is now the exclusive home of the largest collection of Agatha Christie's Poirot.
There was a motive. There is always a motive.
From true crime to a true classic, Britain's finest mysteries live on BritBox. Watch them all with a free trial.
And there we go. So some true classics there, Soumya. Let's start with, well, first of all, congratulations on A Confession. It's a great show, brand new, very new to the service, right? Tell us how that's doing. It's such a great show.
It has been an incredible success. We launched it, gosh, I want to say week before last, and it's fascinating to see how, at first, I think we were getting people that were within the service, you and me, who watch, I think, everything that we put up on BritBox. So we were the first to fall. And as the days went on, you see more and more and more people. And this weekend, it was amazing because it was our #1 show for acquisition. Right?
Wow.
So lots of new people have come in. And what you just played is our TV spot that's on air right now.
Very good.
Of course, as more people become familiar with it, they're coming to check it out on BritBox.
Very good. So, well, we were just talking before we went on air, and I think we can't class you now as a small service. You're 1 million+ subscribers, which is a great milestone. Congratulations. Tell us how things have been going over the shelter in place, because of course we've been looking at lots of data that says people are streaming more. How are you doing?
We've been very fortunate. We've grown very nicely. You know, I think what's been interesting for us to note is that our growth curve seems to be following the social distancing curve. So when you see Governor Cuomo or Newsom put up their social distancing curve and we look at our growth curve, we go, oh, look at that. We peaked when social distancing peaked. It's not, it's, of course, these are strange times. We're fortunate that more people are seeking us out in these times. More people are watching. Fascinatingly, they're watching slightly more. Not a lot more. They're watching slightly more on BritBox, but a lot of people are watching.
Yeah, yeah. I know that's certainly been our behavior in our house. We've been watching a lot more. But one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, you're quite unique in services, in SWOT services, because you rely very heavily on new, brand new content particularly from British soaps like EastEnders and Emmerdale and Coronation Street. And those, of course, have all ceased production. So how are you coping with that in the service? Obviously, it hasn't affected acquisition of new customers, but how are you coping with that?
It's very tough for people, and several people. We have a sizable portion of our audience that tunes in every single day to get their little bite of the soap. The good news is there were some episodes that were in the can. So there were some episodes that played out in the weekly pattern that they would have. And then we had a reduced cadence. Now, the good news is from last week, I think EastEnders announced that they're going back to production in June, so sometime very soon. Corey just announced they're going back into production. So we're hoping that without having to have gone dark, we can come back to air with some of that.
Very good, very good. So they haven't been able to watch their soaps, but they have been able to watch plenty of other things. So give us an idea, has viewing behavior changed over the last few weeks, or are people just watching more of what they love, or are there particular shows that are drawing people's attention more?
So there's a couple of things that I think have been fascinating observations for us as we went through this time. One is Good Morning Britain was getting watched more.
Oh, really?
Okay, go figure.
Yeah.
I'm assuming people just wanted to know what's happening on the other side of the pond. Okay, get that. Then the next thing that we found is, in general, we know the pattern. We know that there are a certain number of episodes that get binged in a row, right? So we know that our average pattern is about 3.6 episodes get binged at any point in time.
3.6? Wow.
Okay? So I don't know who that is that's shutting off their episode midway through. I can't.
Yes.
I can't wait for that to end. But I'm going to assume there's some that watch 2 and some that watch 4, and hence there it is, or some that watch 3. And what we are finding during these times is that's grown to 4.3, I think. Again, it basically just means people watching more.
And are people watching at different times of the day? And are they using different devices, or is it mostly through the connected TV?
Connected TV growth has grown. Acquisition via mobile has grown fascinatingly.
Oh, really?
So the only thing that we can surmise from that is people are watching on their TV while they're surfing on their phone and going, oh, look, let me sign up to one more thing.
That's interesting. So I think the common belief here is that most of the viewing has gone to connected TV. But I can tell you what, I've been looking at some statistics from companies like Alfonso and Nielsen and Comscore, which show that smartphones are still being used quite a lot in the household. So I don't know about you, but that seems to suggest to me that somebody might be on the TV and people will head to their bedroom and watch their own stuff in the bedroom. So you've coped, it sounds like you've coped pretty well with missing soaps, and that you at least have a strategy for them to come back now, which is great to hear. But one of the things that you have really begun to focus on is the originals. And we saw some in that beginning. We saw Confession, which of course is great. So can you talk about the strategy with the originals in your service?
We are gung-ho about the lineup that we have. The one thing that we are unique about is that we have access to such an amazing lineup from both BBC and ITV. So what is an original? Practically everything we're bringing to you, right? as long as, the thing that we've been careful about is that we only call something an original if we've been involved in it creatively and actively in terms of participating with production and talent, right? And interestingly though, sometimes we are involved in it, like you will see in the background that I have here. We're involved with this production team quite actively, but it's not an original for us. It was, this show, as you know, was conceived way before we came in.
Right.
But
that's different with a show like Mallorca Files, where you've taken much more of a lead role there. Talk to us about that show, how that show came to be.
Mallorca Files was a script that came our way. I'm trying to remember if it was before or after Good Karma. And when I saw that script, and I was like, oh, this is an interesting idea for a procedural that could feel like one of the CBS shows, yet it's very British and European in its DNA.
It sure is.
And we talked to BBC about it, and the BBC had been contemplating it as well. And we said, you know what, we're really interested. Why don't we team up and see if we can't try and make this happen? So we got BBC One, we got BBC Studios on it as a distributor. We were a co-producer and commissioner, of course, as was ZDF, and put the show off the ground.
Yeah, it is. That's one of the remarkable things about that show. It really does combine. It's Spanish, it's English, and it's German. And it's really interesting to hear that you have that sort of involvement at the production level as well. That's fascinating.
Yeah, we had fun. We had fun along the way, and talking about, you know, where do you stress on plot? Where do you stress on character? Where's the talent playing all of this? Or where should the talent, or is the talent the setting, right? Like, one of the things that I like to believe about Death in Paradise, even though I think Chris Marshall and the cast has done such an outstanding job of making it theirs, I think that the location becomes the lead talent.
A character, yeah. Very much so. And I think that's also becoming the case with Mallorca Files as well. It's got a very distinctive flavor. It adds a very distinctive flavor to the show, which is quite distinct, I think. So one of the things that you also do, which I find remarkable, is you rely very much on curation inside of BritBox. It's not just a question of, well, we've got all these assets, let's throw them up there, and we'll have a hero bar and we'll throw a few shows in there. You're actually curating shows. So can you talk to us about how you go about doing that, how you think about doing that? And then I want you to talk about one specific example. So, but let's talk about the curation first.
Yeah, you know, we struggle with the curation versus the discovery internally a lot, because we think SVOD is about choice, right? People want to be in control. They want to make the choices they make at the times they make them for the reasons that they make them, right? But we think that we have the luxury of data to allow us to say, you know, I have a theory that SVOD works for 3 reasons. It's the right combination of access, discovery, and community, meaning it's accessible to people. You have to make sure that you are where people expect to find you and you're accessible to them. But they're able to discover you either via a show or discover you in general, or discover what they want on the service. But equally, it makes them feel like they're part of something that they belong to. Otherwise, why is someone going to keep coming back, right? So I think that we have used data to help us understand how much do you push on this curation without making it seem like you are telling people what to watch, right? We want to be in the background, merely suggesting. I actually think Apple does a very good job of this, right? I think Apple has a curatorial voice without being obvious in its recommendations or in its suggestions. And that's one place where we took a cue from. And I like I like making it somewhat factual when you look at the way our team thinks about it. Like, I think one of the things they've done recently is to move up the featured in the newsletter. Now, I think newsletter is a bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Newsletter is a bit heavy-handed, it sounds, right? Like, but the idea is to say, hey, we told you about these shows. Now we're just going to surface it so you don't have to go searching for it. Okay.
So I find, I find the interplay between, I like the newsletter. I like it because you told me that there's a new show. But you're right. What I found when I come into the service is it's not too heavy-handed. If I want to dive off and see a show that I'm in the middle of watching, I can still do that. But you still have that hero bar at the top, which is telling me very, very clearly about that new show that you just told me about in the newsletter, which I think is very well coordinated. Now, I wanted to mention one specific thing, one specific show, but it's just an example, I think. And that you just launched a very, very old show from England called At Last, a 1948 show, with a lot of great comedians who went on to do really super stuff in their own shows, Monty Python, The Goodies, etc. First of all, I like to think of these as hidden gems. How do you identify a hidden gem like that to bring to your service? How do you do that?
It's a show that I personally love. There's a couple of people on my editorial and programming team who love that show. And we'd been on a mission to find that when we'd been thinking about how do we program alongside the Monty Python anniversary last year and the other John Cleese shows. We know what happens when we launch Hold the Sunset with John Cleese is people will dig deeper and find his other shows. Turns out BFI holds the rights, and it took us this long to get the deal done, sadly.
Wow. So BFI held the rights. So it wasn't, I figured it might be lying around in some library somewhere just waiting to get re-aired. So, but one of the things I've noticed is that you've done this persistently. You've done this with other shows. For example, a show that I watched, oh gosh, decades and decades ago, called The Champions, you had up for a while, and I enjoyed visiting with that for a few times. So this is not something that is just a one-off. So how do you do that? How do you figure it out? Does it just come from people who are working as, the programmers who are working as part of the service from you, for example?
Yeah, we have a rhythm that we've been trying to follow because we know the number of people that come in and will watch new shows, scripted, that will watch what we call our now, which you started off by saying what makes us different, what makes us unique is the fact that BritBox has this now strand of shows, which is our link back with either soaps or Question Time or the shows that are airing in the UK right now. We know the people that will come and seek out factual, right? Spring Watch launches today. We know exactly who's going to be there watching Spring Watch, but equally we know the people that are seeking out classic comedy. And we've learned that classic comedy is kind of a group of shows that a significant number of our audience seeks out. So we've made a habit of bringing something new every month. And yes, we have I think the meeting that I have right after this is the meeting to talk about what's our next 6 months of these shows that we've either been thinking about or we have to now go out and acquire. And how does it change with all the other new shows, right? Because you want to make sure that the shows that you're programming in that month is somehow complementary to the other things that you have planned, that it doesn't feel substitutional. And so to your point, we are trying to be subtle without actually dictating how someone should watch.
Very good. Very good. I know that for me that keeps the service very fresh. So when I come in, there's almost always something new or something that I unexpected. And while it may not meet my particular tastes, it's nice to know that there's that possibility there. And I think that's something that's very missing from a lot of SVOD services, that serendipity, that you'll find something unusual that you weren't expecting to. So, I mean, I don't know if that's what you're going for, but that's certainly what you seem to be achieving with me, at least.
Thank you so much for saying that, Colin, because this is very, very important to us. There's on the programming team, which I like to include myself in, because I love the shows, as you know, and I love debating this. But my programming team is a group of passionate people that I like to say each of us is our own version of BritBox. And I always say, today is not Jonathan's BritBox day, so let's not talk about his. Okay, fine, Steve. Okay, Ronnie, it's yours. Right. So we like to talk about it as each of us has a version of BritBox that we like to bring to it, but how are we making it real for that million-plus audience that's growing, right? And continue to stay relevant. And look, I'm very proud of the team because we are very fortunate in that we have very low single-digit churn. Right, we continue to have very, very high conversion from free trial, which means once someone comes in the door, they're very likely to pay and continue to pay. Right? And
yes,
but
funnily enough, I interviewed Marty Roberts from Wicket Labs, and he told me that actually conversion rates have gone up during the shelter in place, which is, and they were already very high. I think he was talking about 60% on average, which I found remarkably high. So it sounds like you're north of that, which is quite an achievement.
Let's well north of that. I can tell you that.
Very good, very good. So let's talk about distribution strategy, because this is I think this is one of the most difficult things that SVOD services struggle with and have to really work hard at. There's one theory where you put your content absolutely everywhere you can. There's other approaches where you're more selective. You're a little bit more selective. So talk about your distribution strategy and how you think about that going forward.
Yeah, this fascinating. I think, again, you and I have spoken about this at several IBCs.
Yes.
So and this is a topic I continue to, it's very dear to my heart, because when we originally launched, we knew that it'd be impossible to get on all the devices that you want to be on. My Access Discovery story that I like to tell, which is Netflix made sure that they were accessible everywhere. Get on, there's a remote that you're holding for your DVD player. It had a Netflix button. They made it so easy for you to stumble onto them wherever they were. And I always say the next stage of that is in terms of discovery. Amazon made that possible by becoming the search and the Google for media. If you were searching for something, you knew there's a good chance Amazon carried it on DVD. Let me just go figure out if I can access this thing, which means that they had saved enough search data and enough information to be able to figure out what that is. And we said, you know what, we're not going to win on those two on day one. What we're going to win on is being something to somebody. And that's where our theory of the community thing came up. But coming back to the very first point, if you accept that your very first thing, which is access, is important to all of this, and you're not going to be able to do it quite readily. Even if it is as simple as the fact that, just because of the fact that we were working on the joint venture with ITV and we had a few such things in it, our launch date moved into early 2017, which means that not having launched at the end of or before the end of 2016 meant that we were locked away from all of the Apple TV boxes that were not fourth generation. Suddenly meant that your app couldn't be available on all of those boxes, and hence all of that footprint. So what choices do you make in that world? And that's when we said, we're going to choose partners who we think are additive to the footprint that we can bring ourselves, and that are additive in terms of the audience that we couldn't readily reach.
Right.
So that became our philosophy in the way we approach this. And then our next stage of it is, if we are looking at it and saying people like the fact that this convenience of having either a single bill or having a one-stop view to all of their content, we're studying that right now. Is that the way the consumer today wants to watch, right? If that is the case, we will make slightly different choices in our next stage of distribution planning. But Not easy.
It's not easy, and it's very, very challenging. I mean, of course, we saw last week, we saw the launch of HBO Max, and it wasn't remarkably on Roku or on Fire TV. And those, of course, probably the bone of contention there is those aggregation portals, the Roku channel and Amazon channels. You are part of, you're on freely available on Android TV, for example. You also do work with channels. So talk to us a little bit about that, in particular, the connected TV providers, because they're really important, right? Because that's where people want to watch. So talk to us about how you approach that, and which ones you prefer. I love the integration on some of the platforms. So go on, talk to us about that.
Yeah, we are, this is another story that I like to share, because when we were working on this in the early days, and you may know this, that the BBC iPlayer is our backend, is one of our OVP components. It's very important to what we do, and that team was hell-bent that we had to launch on web and mobile only, and we were adamant saying that in the US we're not going to launch without Roku. And Roku's not a device that anyone in the UK, or very few people in the UK, use. Right? I think they call it the Now TV box, but that's different, right? Like that
Right.
happened for a different reason. And it was one of those things where we for a while you start to question yourself, right? You're like, here are all these experts who've been doing this for ages, and we're telling you that you don't really need your Roku app right now, and we were fighting it, and we were so glad that we were able to launch with at least Roku. We did launch with Apple 4th gen boxes as well, and AirPlay. I think Chromecast came a little bit later, but we did that as well, because again, our theory was, if I can't instantly be available on every device that people choose, there was a second thing we knew, and that was that our audience was probably going to skew slightly older and slightly female skewing, which meant that they were not likely tech unsavvy. So how do you make it as easy as possible for this audience? So more recently, we've added Samsung, LG. There's a few others that are coming soon. But again, our philosophy to this is we want people to be able to see it where they choose to see it.
Right. Yeah, I think people don't realize how much overhead is involved on getting each one of these platforms. I think that's probably one of the most difficult things for SVOD services, is being available on all the platforms, and very, very time consuming. I should throw in a question. I noticed there's a lot of questions that are coming in around the relationship between BritBox and BBC America and BritBox UK, and Mark Rashba, he asks, he's asking how different and coordinated is the programming between BBC America and BritBox? Do any shows repeat themselves on both services? So let's talk about that, dividing up the market between those three services. So tell us about how you deal first, maybe most appropriately, with BBC America.
Yeah. So as you know, BBC America is a very important partner and an important route to market for us as a company. Having said that, BBC America is in a different space. They're in the cable space where people choose to watch them for different reasons. Yeah. And they are in an ad-supported cable world, and we're not. Right? So we have the luxury of being able to say, I'm going to target women over 45, which I don't know that anyone in the ad-supported cable space would say quite that readily. Right?
Very
that easily, anyway.
Very good. So let's think about the future a little bit here. Mm-hmm. So you've seen a big increase due to C19 viewers. Mm-hmm. Are you anticipating that most of those will stick around? The increased usage will stay. Maybe it will fall a little, but you're expecting to see increased usage from here on out. So talk to me about how that's affected your planning going forward.
Yeah, right now, early indications are that we're going to keep many, if not most, of the subscribers that came in during this time, right? We usually can tell by the breadth of what they're watching and the depth of what they're watching, what their likelihood is to churn or to stay. Right? And right now, those metrics, and by the way, this, right now we are of course measuring that against our pre-COVID times, right? So we have a pretty good idea of what the change is in C19 times. And so if you measure to that as well, it still looks very positive, right? The thing that I think is going to change is not everyone's going to have all of this time in their hands during the day to be watching BritBox. So we think that the time of our viewing will change, and hence the amount of viewing will change, which I think then also implies the kinds of shows, because we see the kinds of shows people watch during the day versus the ones that they would watch as if when they were in a normal viewing cycle. Mm-hmm. Right? Gardener's World, for example, gets watched more during the day than it does in the evening. Right? So there are things like that, like you see this big jump in Gardener's World and you look to see what's going on. Well, more people are watching it during the daytime.
Right. So it sounds like you're expecting some of the increased usage to stick around, but some of the behavioral stuff to sort of go back more to what it was before the crisis. So I don't know if you can answer this or not, but I'm very interested in how it's impacted your plan. So you had a plan for this year in January. Has that plan radically changed? And can you give us, obviously you can't give us very much detail, but can you give us a sort of sense of how that plan has changed for the rest of the year?
Oh my gosh, this is a tough question, because yes, the plan has changed. The plan has changed as we started getting more word of productions that are either halted or not going to deliver this year, right? We had to very quickly take a look at all the shows that we had in the pipeline, things that were planned for, and what would we do with it, and how would we change it? Right? And look, it's not, to your point, it's not fully bedded yet, so it wouldn't be fair of me to share something right now. But the team's working on it, studying what's happening to say, if I know these are the facts, i.e. these shows are not going to deliver, and if I know that this is the new behavior, what do I discount? Do I discount, to your point, do I discount that these kinds of shows are not going to be seen? So it's okay for me not to pick this up and substitute with something else? Okay. So the programming team is going through that exercise right now. So I unfortunately don't have that much detail other than to say with a heavy sigh, yes, they are changing. But the reality is May wasn't. May was a revised schedule as of June. Mm-hmm. Right? And this will tell us. May didn't tell me that people saw that big a difference in the way we were programming. June will tell us more.
Yeah. So anything new and exciting upcoming that you can tell us about?
Gosh, the ones that are going to deliver are difficult. I don't know if you saw the article from New York Times this weekend that was talking about isolation stories. This is a Jeff Pope piece that he has produced during isolation. And we at BritBox were fortunate to have, again, been able to come in on the ground level, and we have it as our original launching in June. Debs is going to kill me. Someone's going to kill me for saying July, and I know it's June. That's happening. We have a Rob Lowe show called Wild Bill that's coming. We have a few more shows that we've picked up. I think all of MI5, we've also just completed that, so that's coming. I can't remember if we've already put up Pointless.
Plenty of reasons for people to be tuning in the coming weeks. So I want to get to the audience Q&A, because there are lots of questions out there, Soumya, some really, really good ones. But before we do that, what I'd like to do is I'd like to put up our poll, Laura. If we can put the poll up, that would be great. And while we're doing the audience Q&A, could you please be filling out that poll? And by the way, enter any new questions that you might want to have Soumya address. So there we have the audience poll. Hopefully everybody can see that. Okay, so let's go to the questions. And the question I want to start, this is a very interesting one from Ron Needham. He asks, do you see a demographic difference between the cohort you had prior to C19 to the one you have acquired during the crisis? And are you acquiring a brand new audience or extending the one you already had? That's an interesting question. Soumya.
It is. Hi, Ron. And short answer, fascinatingly, is the C19 cohort looks very, very similar to the one that we had before, except it seems like we're getting an adjacent audience, which is great for us. We're just widening that aperture ever so little.
Very good, very good. Okay, so Caroline Rauch asks, I'm a huge fan of international shows. The market is becoming so splintered, though. I can't possibly subscribe to all the services that have shows I want to see. What are you doing to address consumer frustration with this and to retain customers? Boy, that's a difficult question.
It's such, Caroline, that's such an amazing question, because I talk a lot about how we do not want to be a place, a destination, a service where someone comes in for one show or thinks that we are all things to all people, but that we are something that makes you feel comfortable enough to say, I can explore more and more and more. I may not find everything. To your point, I don't know that we're ever going to solve for the fact that the market is splintered. There are more people that are going up to producers and buying up whatever, right? Like, I'm sorry, is Outlander a British show? So where should it be? Is Game of Thrones a British show? I ask these because I feel like, at what point do we say this belongs over there or that belongs over there, right? So instead of doing that, what we thought we should do is to create a destination that doesn't become about one show or two shows or about a specific aspect of a show. Instead, we are saying we are about the biggest, the broadest, and the best British television.
So we'll do one more question, Soumya, before we look at the poll. And this is from Mark Patterson. He asks, what role do you see BritBox playing from a social impact perspective? Are you promoting particular programming or looking at new programs which are supporting particular causes?
Yeah. Hey, Mark. Interesting. So this month in May, one of the things we did was we picked up the Florence Nightingale piece around the Florence Nightingale bicentennial, and the team did such an amazing job of launching what I would call a nurses in the memory of nurses. We called it I want to say Heroes of Healthcare, and we felt like it was important for us to bring together programs that celebrated these amazing people that were helping us in these times. Equally, BritBox gave away about 10,000 subscriptions to all the New York hospitals and the healthcare workers in those hospitals. We feel like these are small things that we can do to help. So it's, I don't know if that answers or that is what you were looking for, Mark, but that is a small thing that we did.
He just commented that that's such a well-timed launch. So he's saying yes. It sounds like it did ask this question. I have one more quick question before we look at the polls. What is your guilty pleasure on BritBox? And I'll tell you mine after.
I was just going to say, I want to hear yours. Interestingly, I will tell you, mine changes every month, right?
So what are you watching this month?
QI.
QI? Yeah, that's a funny show. I like Shakespeare and Hathaway. We're working our way. We're almost done, I think. I think we practically have finished all of the Shakespeare and Hathaway shows. So, okay, so let's take a look at the poll. Can we take a look at the poll results, please, Laura? So the first question I asked, Soumya, was I asked, had you signed up for a new SVOD service excluding Netflix, Hulu, and Disney Plus since March of this year? And it looks like actually a remarkable number of people have done that. If I'm right, that's over 50% of our audience have signed up for at least one show.
Wow.
And yes, of course, it's right there. 51% of our audience has signed up for at least one show. So that's pretty interesting and encouraging, I suppose, for you.
Yeah.
And I asked similarly, have you cancelled an SVOD service since March of this year? That's much lower, which is also encouraging. 33% say that they have. 67, 2/3 say they have not. So that shows that people, I think, are probably spending a lot of time with their SVOD services while they're shut at home. And last question, thinking about the best show or movie you've seen since lockdown, where did you see it? Oh my goodness. 77% said on an SVOD service. 77%. Only 5% on linear TV, 10% on pay TV. Wow. That's pretty remarkable.
What have you discovered, Colin? What have you discovered while?
A confession.
Ah, thank you.
Yeah, it's a great show. It's a great show.
Yes.
But I think our time is just about up, and I should ask Ned to come back on. Soumya, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for all of your questions. And Ned, do you want to see us out?
I sure will. Thanks to both of you. That was a really interesting conversation and a great way to kick off our week. As a reminder, folks, we are taking the day off tomorrow and taking some time to reflect with our community. We hope that everyone will stay engaged during these times, and please, stay safe, love one another, and we'll be back on Wednesday. On Wednesday, we do have the head of games at Crunchyroll, which is a very interesting, I guess you would call them a niche SVOD service, wouldn't you, Colin? Crunchyroll?
Well, a little bit bigger than niche as well, Ned.
Okay, a little bigger than niche. So we will have Terry Lee, who is head of 360 and general manager of games at Crunchyroll, back on Wednesday. So see you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.